steps from the Capitol in Cheyenne with reporters in your hometown. These are the top stories from the Cowboy State Daily News Center.
Happy New Year. I'm Mac Watson. And 2025 was an amazing year for Cowboy State Daily. Not only did we increase our audience by more than 24%, jumping from 50 million page views to 60 million page views, but subscribers to our newsletter exploded by 33%, from 79,000 to 105,000. And we thank you. So today we'll talk to our reporters about the most read stories on Cowboy State Daily from the year that was 2025. Dale Vesith ran cattle on the same Montana ranch that his father did, as well as his grandfather before him. But he donated the 38,000-acre, $21 million ranch to the Ranchers Stewardship Alliance. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reported the reason why he and his wife donated their ranch was to ensure that it stayed a working cattle operation rather than being sold off or converted to other uses.
The story about that place really struck a nerve with readers, I think, because it really highlighted the need to take drastic action to keep working ranches going. In a world where real estate or hunting properties, ranchers are lured away from keeping the ranch alive by selling out to some kind of real estate venture or resort venture that's happening. And in this part of Montana, what's also happening is that the conservation group American Prairie Reserve is buying up ranches and creating a really impressive bison range, but that's really controversial in that part of Montana. And so the Visas found a different route. They created their own foundation to preserve a way of life and to preserve a special place.
As ranch communities in Wyoming know full well, it's harder than ever for younger generations of ranch families and anyone else interested in running sheep and cattle to break into the business. 12 hours after his wife shot her 4 children and herself in Byron, Wyoming, Cliff Harshman sat in a hospital waiting room. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland interviewed Cliff, who said that he had lost his best friend, his kids, everything.
I had reported that this mother was involved in this tragic murder-suicide incident. I had reported that the girls had died, that one was hospitalized. And so I was on top of the hard news part of it, but then I called Cliff Harshman, the dad, the husband, and he was devastated. He was very raw with me. He said that his wife had essentially been through hell, mental health-wise, and he wanted to let people know what had happened.
A coworker organized a GoFundMe account to help Cliff deal with funeral and other expenses and allowed him to focus on grieving. A dust-up in the U.S. Senate over Australian tariffs opened a discussion about unfair trade practices. Cowboy State Daily's Renee Jean reported that Senator John Barrasso said that while $29 billion of Australian beef had been sold in the United States, not one hamburger from America was allowed down under.
Why can't we sell Wyoming beef in Australia? We have some of the best beef in the world. And I think the thing is this commodity, what we do is we import a lot of our ground chuck comes from foreign countries so we can get that affordable hamburger on the dinner plate. Our beef that we raise here is really high quality. It's not ground chuck, it's the premium steaks. And that's really what we're trying to get in Australia. But Senator Barrasso's frustrated, they won't even buy a hamburger from us. Did kind of make the point that we've been trying to get in that market for a long time and we just can't seem to make any headway.
Australia only accepts U.S. beef if it can be proven that the beef was sourced from cattle born, raised, and slaughtered in the United States. That's an issue because many exporters also source beef in Canada and Mexico for their operations. I'll be back with more of the most read stories from Cowboy State Daily in 2025 right after this.
988 is for Mike, who's struggling to move on. For Lydia, who's overwhelmed by the pressure of doing it all. For Eric, who feels sad and lonely this time of year. For Helen, who's so anxious she can't sleep. 988 is for them, for you, for Wyoming. To get free support for a mental health or substance use crisis, call or text 988, available anytime, day or night.
The most read stories from Cowboy State Daily for the year that was 2025 continues now. After years of questions and wondering what happened, DNA confirmed the remains found in a rural area near Gering, Nebraska back in October. Cowboy State Daily's Jen Coker spoke to the mother of Chance Engelbert, the Moorcroft man who had been missing for more than 6 years.
His family has no problem believing that he did fall, as investigators say, between 130 and 290 feet from the top of Scotts Bluff Monument. However, the bone of contention is how he got onto the top of that monument. It was quite off the ways for him to get up there. It was a steep climb. It was roughly between, depending on where he accessed it, between 2 and 5 miles. So that's the question. How on earth did he get up there? His family does not believe he got up there on his own. The Gary Police Department and the other law enforcement entities involved in the case have ruled it accidental. However, his family questions it, and there's a huge public outcry on the internet.
The 25-year-old Engelbert disappeared over the July 4th holiday weekend in 2019 on a visit from Wyoming to Gering, Nebraska, to visit the family of his wife, Bailey, and their infant son. Also in 2025, President Donald Trump pardoned Troy Lake of Cheyenne back in November. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reported that the 65-year-old Wyoming diesel mechanic spent 7 months in federal prison for tweaking and removing emission systems on ailing engines.
This one was edgy because if it's not your newspaper, it's always a little bit dodgy to be out there featuring convicted felons. So it was with a lot of deliberation and talking to my dad about the whole situation with diesel deletes and contemplating and hearing Troy Lake's story, sifting through court documents, interviewing truckers. And I ultimately decided, we're going to feature a convicted felon and write about his bid for a pardon. I was the first reporter to do so. And it generated such a firestorm of coverage nationally that ultimately he was pardoned.
The Wyoming diesel mechanic spent 7 months in federal prison for tweaking and removing emission systems, but he was originally sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison, but was released early to home confinement with an ankle monitor back in September. And who can forget this one? A tourist in Grand Teton National Park found himself between a grizzly and its mate, so he took the only escape available. He dove headfirst through the open window of his car. And yes, somebody took a picture, and it went viral. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reported that a tour guide got the photo of the man's moment of escape.
I reached out to the photographer who caught that moment, and she told me that the guy was actually caught completely unawares and wasn't really doing anything wrong. There was a male grizzly that was booking it through the area and just happened to be crossing the road. People alerted this guy that a grizzly approached him, and then he did the most sensible thing possible, looked for the nearest safe spot where he could be safe, and that was inside a vehicle, but the only way to get inside that vehicle was through the open window. So that's what he did. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and made for one heck of a funny photo.
So if you're thinking about visiting Grand Teton or Yellowstone National Park in 2026, the National Park Service is reminding you to keep at least 100 yards between you and the bears. And that's just some of the most read stories of 2025 from Cowboy State Daily. Remember, you can get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting that daily newsletter button at cowboystatedaily.com. And you can listen to this newscast each and every day by clicking subscribe on our YouTube channel or listen to us on your favorite podcast app. Have a happy and healthy 2026. I'm Mac Watson for Cowboy State Daily.